Evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to our special board meeting from May 1st, 2018 to discuss the millages that are being put forth before the township. At this time, I would like all of you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would ask all cell phones be put on silent, please, including my own. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Liz Smith,
Here.
Andrea Voorhees,
Present.
Mike Paul.
Here.
Scott Ruggles is absent. Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Lilly is here. Mr. Kowal.
Here. Looking for a motion for approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion, looking for
I'll
support.
support.
I have support by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Has been approved. At this, this moment, moving on to item 5 is public comment. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, I would like to have you step forth, identify yourself. You'll have 3 minutes to do so.
Keep Richard Otto, 8771 Townsend Drive. 2 comments. One, I want to thank the board, the water department, and the water rate users. It was a wonderful sight to see when they are flushing my hydrant, to see nothing but clear water coming out of it. Iron filtration system does a wonder. Spoke with Tim, the guy that was the worker there, really nice person for the water department, a great asset. We had a little discussion, but thank you. It's the nicest thing to see, not this red creek out in front of our cul-de-sac.
Good.
The second item, I'd like to address Liz Smith's comments to me last week that I am not a friend of the library. I don't know where she gets that statement. Yes, I did not support the $8.6 million bond, and I'm not sure why anybody would when you didn't have enough information. It's like going to the bank and saying I need $500,000 to build my house, but they're going to ask me for all the details, and there were no details to this, but other than trust us, we're going to, for the 8.6, we had no idea. I did not appreciate that. I voted for every millage for the fire, police, since I moved here in January of 1990. I supported these activities. Just because I did not vote for a bond, and I did a recount because it was 2, I think it was the most prudent thing to do, because 2 votes. And we did find errors. Bond 1, I'm okay with that. But I think it was the right thing to do for the township. I've always thought of the township in the best light. I want to do the right things, but I have a problem when somebody says I'm not a friend. I don't know where you get that. The only time I first met you, and when I ran for trustee, that's the only time we ever met, so I'm not sure how you came to these conclusions. I think your data is unfounded, and there's no merit to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak at this time? I'm now closing public comment. Moving on. The reason for tonight's meeting is to discuss the resolutions that are before us for the police millage renewal, fire millage renewal, and library millage renewal. The process before us comes every few years, and there are certain criteria that the millage language is required to have. And essentially, the board is here tonight to approve these millages as long as the language is proper. The millage rate to be authorized, the estimated amount of revenue that would be collected in the first year that the millage is authorized to levy, the duration of the millage in years, a clear statement of the purpose for the millage, and a clear statement indicating whether the proposed millage is renewal of a previously authorized millage or the authorization of a new additional millage, in other words, an increase. So those are the criteria that are set forth for these particular resolutions. And Chief, I understand you would like to go first, and
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
the floor is yours.
We are asking the board to approve the proposal. It's a 4-year millage renewal, police millage renewal. It's for 4 years from 2018 to 2021. And it will be at 4.0371 on each of the 1,000 of taxable value. I'd like to talk about the police department a little bit. We are extremely cost-effective, conservative police department. We've stayed within our budget. We've stayed within our budget for years. We've actually added, in the past few years, we've added to our fund balance. We have a healthy fund balance, and that's why I'm asking only for a renewal and
Microphone up, Chief.
not an increase.
There you go.
And not an increase.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions from any of the board members at this time?
I'm gonna ask this question of everyone, because this is some of the questions that people have asked me about. If this millage were not to be renewed, where would your cuts be? Would it be personnel, not hiring after retirement?
This is 86% of our budget. This is pretty much all or nothing. This is
Okay.
we would lay off 86% of our staff for the police department.
Very good, okay.
No, that's fine, because that's.
Mr. Powell?
Chief, obviously, I'm certainly in favor of the millage renewal. I've got a couple questions. The renewal language, and I apologize, and I'm going to ask you a specific question.
Just to interject on that, this has
Yes.
all been reviewed by council, and it's
And
line
I'm good with
specific.
that, and I'm assuming I'm just assuming that they're all been approved by council. And so I should have asked that question because
That's okay.
it should have been. Is the language in Exhibit A for the language for the ballot, is it precisely word for word as to what was approved back in, 2000, the original,
4 years ago.
4 years ago?
Yes.
Yes.
So that was, it's similar only in the fact that, it's different only in the fact that we asked for an increase the last time, and we took that language out of there, but all the for the purpose of operating equipment, providing personnel, constructing and purchasing for the police department, and any other purpose authorized by law for the police protection service is all the same language. as it was.
Identical to the previous?
Yes.
Okay. And the next question I have for you, is there could you give me your opinion as to why you're asking for this to be placed on the August election instead of the November election?
Yes, this is a public safety. I don't want to say problem, but this is for public safety. This is for the safety and welfare of the community, and we have a high level of safety in White Lake, and I would not want to risk it by doing it in November in case we lose, or in case the initiative fails. If it fails in August, we have another attempt. If it fails in November, I don't know where the safety and welfare of the community will be at that time, because there's no other way to get the money.
Well, we would have to ask for a special election if we had something like that happen.
Right. So that's why I want to have it in August, so we don't have to have a special election. That way, if for some reason that it doesn't pass, which I think it will, you have it in August, and if it doesn't, then you have a reboot and have it in November. That's why.
Okay, well, I'm going to state this in all three of these resolutions, that I have faith in the residents of White Lake Township to be extremely wise and intelligent in their decisions at the polls, and so my personal opinion is I want more people to vote for it than less. And so
Thank you.
You can kind of guide me, you can kind of know where I'm going to go on this one.
Sure.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Roman?
You looking for a motion?
You just look like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm all set. I support it, and I actually support the idea of going in August, just because there's such a critical need for the renewal. Gosh, if this fails, I think our police department would have to reboot and really figure out what and how they're going to appeal to the voters in November. But without this millage, our police department would kind of be like a Mayberry RFD. It would basically be the chief and a deputy.
And
So-
dispatcher. Right.
No, I'm in total support.
Okay.
Right.
Mr. Lilly?
And an opportunity, I'm sorry, Mike.
No, please go ahead.
Opportunity to review the 5 items that you had presented earlier, and in my opinion, that I think the millage language for the police has met all of that 5 criteria, as well as have checked the amount of mills that were consistent with last year's collection and seem to be consistent with those. So I have no problem with
Thank
what's
you.
being presented.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Ms. Smith?
I'm in full support.
All right. I, too, am also in full support of this resolution simply because we are a very fortunate community to have the level of safety that we have. Safety comes at a cost. As our national security comes at a cost to this nation, our little nation of White Lake Township, so to speak, is important to each and every one that lives here. So it's very important that we maintain this level of government services. We also have sort of a la carte police department. I don't know how many communities offer the home vacation security check. I don't know how many communities offer getting folks out of their car when they're locked in, locked out, excuse me. And some, well, it depends, you never know.
That's happened before, too.
That's happened before, too. So, and the level of service that we have and the involvement that we have with our Citizens Academy and our Youth Academy and the entire amount of programs that we have that benefit all of the citizens of this community every day. So, and looking at the latest statistics that we saw, where we ranked in 2017 the 25th safest city in the state of Michigan, that tells me a lot. And I believe that, again, how people feel about our community are going to feel exactly if they're safe in it. And safety is, through the fire and the police department's services to our residences. So with that, Mr. Roman? Oh, Mr. Powell.
I totally agree with you, Rick, and I totally agree with Terry, and I certainly agree with Mike. My problem is that we have to stand by some provision that is equal throughout the entire township, and I have all the faith in the world in our residents. I'm in full favor of the police millage. I can't even imagine that the electorate would deny this millage. I think that we need to be consistent. And in my opinion, we learned a very poor lesson the last time we put something on the primary, and I'm not willing to vote for that now. So as stated, unless it's modified to the November election, I will need to vote no on this.
It's your opinion, sir. You're entitled to it. So, Mr. Roman?
Are you looking for just a motion to approve the resolution? Okay, do you need also language to approve, or a motion to approve the language on the ballot, Terry?
I don't believe so. I think all we need is to approve the resolution.
You might want to read the...
Assure that the language will be, that language will be presented to the county.
We'll read the ballot language, though, so I would read it.
Mr. Supervisor, I would view the ballot language as part of the full
Correct.
proposal, so
Correct.
I don't think they're two.
No, they are,
They're not separate.
it's one document. However,
document.
for the sake of the public out there, I believe that we could recite it. Would you like me to recite it?
I can do that
That's
for you,
fine.
sir.
Please do.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 18-010, which is the police millage renewal resolution. And I'll read Exhibit A, which is the language for this renewal. Shall the previously authorized increase in tax limitation on all taxable property in White Lake Charter Township, Oakland County, that expired in 2017 be renewed, and the township be authorized to levy an amount not to exceed 4.0371 mills. That's $4 and approximately 3 cents on each $1,000 of taxable value against all taxable property for a period of 4 years, 2018 to 2021 inclusive, for the purpose of operating, equipping, providing personnel, constructing, and purchasing for the police department or any other purpose authorized by law for police protection service. The estimate of the revenue the township will collect in the first year, which is 2018, if this millage is approved and levied by the township, is approximately $4,485,000.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to support that
I
motion.
have a motion, I have support. All in favor?
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Roll call, yeah.
New roll call.
I'm sorry, it was Romans and
Liz Smith, supported.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Paul.
No, because I believe that all millage requests should be put on the main November election. I have more faith in our electorate than the rest of my board does.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Colwell.
Yes. You're good to go, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like to have Chief Gurka come forward for item 6B, resolution number 18011, the fire millage renewal.
Why was there no public comment on this before we had votes?
Well, there could have been if you wanted to say something.
Usually you open it to the public.
You open up to the public and you didn't.
I beg your pardon.
Open it now.
We'll open it now. What would you like to say? Hold the floor, Chief.
Yes.
I would like to know why we are not going and voting on the millage, which is fine. I support the police. I support the firemen. But why aren't we separating that and putting that as a yes to the millage language and then putting it to a vote for having it on a November ballot opposed to the August ballot? Because I don't understand, who's not understanding what happened last year, and the public is infuriated. And to do this all over again, you guys are shooting yourself in the foot.
I believe that may be an opinion that you hold. I don't think everybody...
That's an opinion, excuse me, I think that's an opinion of a lot of people in White Lake that's gonna come back down to a huge ramification on your villages.
Well, the request of these millages is made by both chiefs. And they're the ones that are making the request for these specific dates because they feel that they need to do that in the best interest of the community. So that gives them an opportunity. The legislation is going to be, I believe, taking care of that in the next round of elections, that'll be remedied. But in this particular round, it's at the request of the chiefs to have this posted at the August primary, and that's what they want to do, and the language is written as such. I see no reason to deny that.
But how about the people of White Lake? They represent the people of White Lake.
I have not had enough persons contact me to say that this particular item of police and fire is an issue.
So you don't think the issue is going to come up again from what happened with the library last year of all the people that weren't allowed or could not allowed, I take that back, who maybe not have been in town or maybe abreast of a vote, maybe on vacation. Therefore, we're going to do the same thing again. I mean, when do you people learn? When do you learn a lesson?
Always vote absentee.
I'm only responding to the request.
Special interest.
I'm responding to the requests of the department's heads. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any other public comment on that? Yes, Jim.
Mary Early, 5925 Pine Ridge Court. At that August election, when the library proposal passed, it was also the primary for all of you, so it isn't like people didn't know or couldn't vote absentee or whatever, so it's a good issue.
Thank you.
Thank you for passing.
Anyone else? Okay, now we're moving on to the fire chief. Chief Gurka.
Yes, well, first of all, let me start out. I, along with almost 60 members, would be standing behind me saying, thank you to the residents for supporting us and allowing us to serve you. We're extremely honored and blessed to be able to do that. We're very thankful for that every day. And we do know who pays our salary. And of course, it's the township, but it's the people behind the township, our citizens, our community that support us, and we're very grateful for that. So with that said, moving on, we're here to talk about the fire millage. That's Exhibit A, and along with that is the resolution number 18-011. The fire department is asking for a renewal piece. This is something that we're not attempting to, we're not trying to slide anything across in front of the public or do anything behind anybody's back here. This is a renewal of the 1.8792 mills that we did have go through 4 years ago at our previous millage request. And if you remember back then, the fire department had been kind of stagnant. We hadn't been maintaining our facilities as much. We didn't have a fire marshal to enforce some of our codes and our inspections. So we took on some new programs, and we did receive a grant for a recruitment and training coordinator, which we've utilized for the last 4 years also. And so we have been moving forward, and we'd like to continue to move forward. And so our request is a renewal of the 1.8792 mills. And of course, this would, as things progress over the 4 years with the Headley Amendment, that would all take effect, and it would allow us to only collect revenue that would be a true renewal. So the fire department and the police department as well is not attempting to get new funds, new revenues here, but we're just attempting to collect what we were collecting last at the previous millage, and we'd like to go forward with our current programs that we've been running and administering.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from the board members?
Yeah, I have the same question. If this renewal were to go through, what percentage of your budget and what would happen?
Well, obviously what would happen is, unfortunately, our fund balance would get eaten up extremely quickly, and once our fund balance is gone, we have no revenue to operate. We'd be closing fire stations and not being able to run equipment, laying off personnel, not recruiting anymore. Basically the fire department is going to fall apart fairly quickly.
Thank you.
Mr. Powell?
How'd you know? Yes, thank you.
Insight.
Chief, you didn't quite answer Ms. Voorhees' request, and that's the percent of the budget. What percent is this of your budget?
Well, as far as right now, we have a fund balance right now, an operating fund balance of $1,486,718. So what would happen is, with no renewal, I could try to plot this out for you exactly, but you can see that by looking at the numbers that with a budget currently of around $3 million, how far that would go. Without a millage renewal, again, we'd strictly be relying on our fund balance. We would work that down to nothing, and then we'd have no more revenue to operate.
All right, let me ask the question a little bit differently,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
What is the total millage that the fire department operates on?
Well,
Is this your entire millage?
no, we also have an 04M equipment budget that was approved several years ago, and those funds remain separate and intact strictly for equipment and apparatus. And the thing with that is, the whole history of that is, for many years White Lake operated with very substandard equipment, and so once this equipment 04M millage was established, that was earmarked strictly for apparatus and vehicles that we may need. I'll give you a quick example. We have tankers. They're a little bit old. They're definitely not ready to replace, but if something catastrophic happens and it goes out of service, we could potentially, to buy a new tanker, we're looking at over $400,000. And so I know when I came here 4 years ago, it was my pledge to treat that budget very wisely and to only go into it when it was absolutely needed for equipment and vehicles. Yeah.
So this 1.8792 mils is your total operating budget, not using fund balance?
Yes, yes.
All right, that's kind of where I wanted the answer. And then the same question I asked the police chief, this renewal request, is it precisely the same language for operating, equipping, providing personnel, constructing and purchasing for fire department and other purposes authorized. Is that the precise language that was voted on the last time?
Yes, I believe so, yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Mr. Roman?
So this millage represents approximately 65% of the total millage for the fire department.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's because the 04M, okay.
It's already
Yes, okay.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to, as a point of clarification, we're not collecting anymore on the 04M.
Okay.
Those monies are fixed in that account, and, they're there and available if something catastrophic happens. And I think it puts the fire department in a good position as far as, equipment failures and things like that. And as you know, with the weather, dirt roads, all kind of situations, we have a pretty good maintenance budget, but things happen.
Okay, so the police chief said that it was about 86% of their budget. You represented that it's 65% of the budget for the fire
Well,
department.
the total millage, so I think you're pretty
Okay.
close in assuming it's right around 65% of the
Okay.
budget.
Thank you, Mike.
Chief, just your 04M, what's the balance in that, approximate balance in that?
Right now, there's $3,883,080 in there.
And that's,
And just as to let the board know, coming up, again, for equipment purchases, we have all our self-contained breathing apparatus that is up for, out of hydro date and time to look at a purchase there. So we put in a grant for it, but we're looking at, around $300,000 to replace all the self-contained breathing apparatus. Also, I was informed just a few days ago that we have a fill station and a compressor that compresses the air and puts it into our breathing apparatus. That is on its end stage of life, and a piece like that may be $10,000-$15,000 purchase of equipment. So we do have things, definitely on the horizon. There's a lot of unknowns too with this fire apparatus, and so one may look at that and say, oh, well, that seems significant. Well, it's a good number, but the things that are coming and that we foresee in the next several years, we need to have a fund like that.
Thank you.
okay, thank you, Chief. Any other board members? Ms. Smith?
I'm in support of this millage as well.
Mr. Lilly?
Same comments I had for police department. I believe the 5 items met their criteria, and also the millage rate is consistent with what was collected last year.
Very good.
I'm sorry, Terry, I didn't hear the last thing you said with the fan.
The millage rate was consistent with what happened last year.
Okay, thank you.
Roger Harrington. I'm just curious, how do we keep this from happening every 4 years? In other words, in terms of this being a temporary matter for renewals for the police and the fire and the library. Obviously, it's a growing community, and you aren't going to at any point go back to what it was like 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Why do we have to keep going at this every 4 years for these groups? That's a good question.
That's a good question. And, my understanding is, and in my entire life, it's always been the millage is running a up to an 8-year cycle. And this is just part of the process of the millage. It's never a lifelong, this is what you're going to pay from now until the cows come home. So that gives the voters an opportunity to scrutinize what's done and be able to have a voice in the matter. This is part of the democratic process.
And if I may, that's what we're doing here tonight, is we're just putting this on the ballot for that to happen, for the people to vote on.
Right. Mr. Clerk?
I think the big thing is changes with the Headley Amendment that happened, that when Headley came in, it forced municipalities to not collect any more than the rate of inflation, or 5%, whichever was less. And I think that had a drastic effect on long-term millages, because even in the 4 years, this millage is going to be rolled back a little bit from what we're currently collecting. So the longer the term, the more it gets rolled back, and the less, when it comes to renewal, is going to be, and that's why a lot of people have got away from the long term that we were able to do years ago, but not today.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That's why we have a clerk. Answers those questions. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Pensionato.
One quick, I mean, I understand why it's got to be 4 years, because if you look at 2008, when property values took a major dip, and he had a 10-year or 8-year millage out there, what are you going to do then? You are going to get hit. big.
You're locked in.
You're locked in. So I think there's it makes sense in a way to be 4 years, just so you don't get trapped in that kind of cycle.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm in support of all these millages, but sometimes I like to be devil's advocate and find out what's worst case scenario. Because sometimes with something I like to know. I mean, I'm totally in support, like I said, but sometimes knowing worst case scenario is good for the people to know.
Very good. Okay, so moving forward. Mr. Wallman?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 18-011, which is the fire millage renewal, and I will read the language. Shall the previously authorized increase in tax limitation on all taxable property in White Lake Charter Township, Oakland County, that expired in 2017 be renewed, and the township to be authorized to levy an amount not to exceed 1.8792 mils, which is the equivalent of $1.88 on each $1,000 of taxable value against all taxable property for a period of 4 years, 2018 to 2021, inclusive, for the purpose of operating, equipping, providing personnel, constructing, and purchasing for the fire department or any other purpose authorized by law for fire protection service. The estimate of the revenue the township will collect in the first year, 2018, if the millage is approved and levied by the township, is approximately $2,088,000.
I'll support that motion.
I have a motion. I have support. Roll call vote.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
As the previous request, I'm voting no because I believe the people in this township are wiser than my colleagues believe they are, and therefore I would vote for this if it was in November, but because it's being requested for an August primary, I vote no.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Chief.
it. Thank you, Board.
Mr. Clerk?
Before we get into the library thing, I think it would be good maybe to ask Denise if the library has approved their part of resolution.
Please bring that forward.
The only question was, did they approve it tonight? The language doesn't have to, we'll have to do some stuff on filling in the resolution just if they passed it tonight.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I have a couple of sheets of information you might find helpful. Chief is gonna.
Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me at your meeting. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Denise Stefanik, the new director at the White Lake Township Library.
even though I'm the new director, I've been at the library for about 10 years now, well, actually 12. And 2 were part-time. I have a great crew of people that work at the library. There's about 20 of us. Some are part-time, some are substitutes. And I'm coming before you to ask for you just to put our millage request on the ballot. As you know, we're a PA 164 library with a elected board that has already approved the millage language. It's mirrored exactly against the police and fire millages, with 2 exceptions. One is it's an 8-year millage, and we have slightly different wording for the type of things that are covered that we can buy with the funds. Our millage has the estimate of revenue the township will collect in the first, let's try again. The long sentence. All right. Basically, equipping the White Lake Township Library or any other purpose authorized for law by library service. No, this is your resolution. There are basically 2 resolutions. One that our library board just approved, and then one that you have that Terry needs to authorize. They're very similar. Ours has the difference between the fire and the police is ours has, we can use the funds for the purpose of operating, maintaining, and equipping the White Lake Township Library or any other purpose authorized by the law for library service.
Okay.
We have basically 3 millages that support the library, and I gave you a synopsis of them.
Thank you.
Excuse me. We have a perpetual millage. It started at 0.3. That was the smallest millage that a library could be started at. It worked for a while. Then there was a millage attempt, well, it passed, for a 0.5, which has since been rolled back to 0.4373. Then one that I'm asking for to be placed on the ballot this time is one for 0.3861 for a total of a little over a mil. That is basically the benchmark for essential library services to have at least a mil, and we slowly worked up to that. Many libraries in our area have much more, as you may know or may not know. For instance, West Bloomfield has like a 4.5 on all those nice homes. And so they have a very, very nice library, which they pay for. we have a nice library. I think it's a very well-run library, and we offer essential library services and more. So in particular, we are the first place that parents look to for helping their child learn to read.
Early reading, yeah.
Early reading, so important, especially with the way our Michigan literacy rates now have plummeted. And it's going to be even more important that we keep those resources available for kids. They're not going to be on a little phone trying to learn to read. It doesn't work that way. I could go on and on if you let me, but there's a couple of different ways to become literate, and the library provides the very early literacy for the children, and then we hope to keep them involved over the summers, which we have a great summer reading program, and keep them from sliding back. They call it the slide back. They come for programs, they come for entertainment, they come for learning something new, they socialize. Parents come with the children. It's just a win-win all around. And then we have people that just come in for reading pleasure. They know that if they come to the library, they can get a book that might cost them $30 and take it home, not having to pay for it and return it. And there's most of their millage money that they paid for, or some of it, covered. We do have a very large programming emphasis, and our adults, older adults in White Lake have really benefited and from that program. I was just looking at statistics of neighboring libraries, and ours are almost twice as much as Highland, Milford, Waterford. And we have a smaller budget. They have a smaller population. Anyway, okay, so I did give you the budget for 2018, and I have talked to a few of you when we were talking about the new building. And yes, we definitely know that we're going to have more expenses with the new building. This is the way it is right now for our current library. And you can see salaries are almost a little more than half. Salaries and benefits are 60%. It's a service that we provide to the community primarily. We have a very good materials budget. That would be books, CDs, audiobooks, downloadable books, which is becoming more and more popular, especially with our commuter population. We have a thing called high demand collections, which is current bestsellers, new fiction, popular nonfiction, and we have a special budget for that. Generally, we try to keep on budget. Most of the line items will, because we don't want to go over budget, we keep them a little above budget. Hence, at the end of the year, we would have a small fund balance that we would either designate for a purchase, equipment purchase, something like that. That we have computers. There are a lot of people that use computers. How can I forget that? Many of the lower income residents come in and use the computers to apply for jobs. We help them as much as we can. We also teach them how to use the computer and/or make a resume, try to show them how to do it so they can do it themselves. Some cannot, and I think it might be kind of a way to weed people out of getting a job. If you can't get on that computer, then there's a problem. And especially when we had the downturn in the economy, we had the computer usage. Actually, the library usage was off the charts. People were cutting back, rightly so. They were smart. We tried to market the library and let them know that what they already paid for is available to them. And we had different options for them to come to the library and learn skills. We had different tutorials, all kinds of things. And with all due respect, Mike and Rick and Mike, I was thinking about it. You guys were probably in the mode of trying to keep up when that was happening, maybe not seeing what was happening at the library. I think perhaps, I know Terry probably saw it and Liz saw it. We really did provide a service that nowhere else in the township could it be provided. The people could not afford their internet. They came to the library. They were working on getting a job. Lots of layoffs. We were just trying to help them as best as we could. And we still offer that, and we're prepared if we ever need to be a more active role in that. But it is something that libraries are essential for. Okay, so we're back on the new library. The new library is going to be larger, obviously. We plan on keeping the same amount of staff, professional staff. We may need to have a few clerical additions. Nowhere near the amount of salary that my co-director had. So we have that amount of money, which is sizable for, as you know, probably about the same amount of money that you guys make, right around there. Plus think of your benefits that we'll have available to go to the new library. That should take care of a lot of things that might come up. We are going to keep that money as a reserve for the first year to see exactly what we're going to need for maintenance and utilities. I have a pretty good idea based on what our architects and our consultant has prepared for us, and I think we're going to be comfortable, not pinching our pennies, but taking care of the asset that the public is paying for. We've always done that. We have a nice facility. I think it's a third the size of what we should have right now. In the kids area, again, if you've been in the kids area, for a population of 30,000, it's very, very small. Okay. Materials, right now we have to weed a lot because there's no room for some of the books. As I mentioned, we have a very, very generous material budget. And as our friends have nice sales, and that's good. But when next year, we won't be weeding as much. We'll have space for those books, and we'll be able to keep them on the shelf longer. So we will not be adding a budget for any physical materials right now. If we do add a budget, it would be for electronic or downloadable type media. We're not open on Sundays. We've never had a huge push for that in White Lake, and it's one way to keep our budget down. We do have an arrangement with Waterford Township. They are closed on Fridays. Many of their patrons, if they need a computer, will come over to White Lake. Many of our, there's not a whole lot, but some people do need something on a Sunday. They can go over to Waterford and be welcomed with open arms. We have Highland is closed on Sunday. Milford, I'm not sure if they were open, but they might be closed now. Commerce is open. They have a larger budget, but they are open on Sundays, and that's part of it, part of the reason why they have a larger budget. Okay. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you,
Do
Denise.
you have any questions?
Any,
And I do want to remind you that the library board did approve this, so it's not, I would like to answer any questions you have, but I'm asking for professional courtesy and
Andrea?
Yeah, I have two. One's just pretty much the same way I've asked everyone. If the renewal is not renewed, how would that affect you? How would that affect the library?
well, it would be, I want to say catastrophic, that's kind of, it would be, we would have to cut a lot of things. We could still stay open, we'd probably be open 3 days a week or 4 days a week max, shorter hours, not as many, not be able to buy materials.
Would that include personnel, so it'd be like cut over the whole board or just certain areas?
Yes, it would be cut over the whole board. That's another thing, that the new library does have some automation that's going to help us move things, move our books faster, and will help us cut down on some of the clerical work that takes a long time, getting a book returned and back on the shelf.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And my only comment is thank you for the invite tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
My full-time job has me working, so.
Okay, I know we talked about
Yeah,
it.
no,
and I,
you
you
guys
said morning,
were
I thought, okay,
I
well,
couldn't be
Andrea
there.
should be able
Okay.
to. I do apologize, it was short notice, but our board wanted to be there, and that was the best day for
I just, no, I
everybody.
can't do 9 a.m. So no, you're good,
Thank
Denise. I
you.
know we had talked.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yes, Denise, thank you. In the documents that you presented this evening, the budget for 2018 is 1.2 million. The expected revenue is 1.1 million, about 100,000 less than what your proposed budget is.
Yes.
So next year, certainly there's going to be some higher costs for the utilities and things like that.
Yes.
And did I hear you say that because you're going to be able to drop out about $100,000 of materials that you're not going to be looking to replace?
No,
That's where you're going to get that balanced budget at?
no,
Okay, I'm sorry.
no, no.
So,
We will keep the same material budget.
oh, you will?
It will be, it still will be a good budget, higher than most libraries. Where we're going to be saving money this year compared to next year, or last year compared to next year, is we will not have another director. We're not planning on hiring another individual for that. There may be somebody on staff that might be promoted, and we'll be moving some duties around.
So you'll be looking to still provide a balanced budget?
Absolutely, always.
1.2 million is what you
Always.
proposed for 2018. Your revenues are at 1.1 million, so you're,
We have, if you look at the top of that,
yes.
we have other sources of funds, not like your revenue sharing. I wish I had some of that.
Oh, I see,
Um,
okay.
We get a state aid of $20,000 a year, I think.
Yes, thank you. So you have $100,000 coming in from other revenue sources?
Exactly, yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I'd certainly like to point out, before we continue, that I've always known that the library offers services that you can't get anywhere else in the township. So whether it's a downturn in the economy or upturn or daily activity, I think there's no other source that people can go than the library for certain things. So I certainly agree with that. And I'm going to ask the same question, and you actually already addressed it. Your millage language is different than it was 4 years ago, or 8 years ago, or whenever that was, 8 years ago.
It's slightly different, but it's basically states operating. There's no construction in there.
Okay,
That's what you
and
meant.
I'm going to, well, let me ask another question. The millage that was passed, your last millage for the
4 years ago?
building of, no, the building of the building.
Okay, the bond, yes.
And the building in operation, or the building of the building. Did that millage also include equipping the library?
Yes, it did.
So where I'm having a little bit of a problem here is that although you've represented here that this is a renewal, and when people go in and look at a renewal, they say, oh, obviously I voted for this before. And in reality, they haven't, because you are actually looking to supplement the bond that was passed, or the building bond. You're looking to supplement that where you could not supplement it before. It was just in operations. Your millage 8 years ago was library operations and all legal purposes. It did not specifically state that you could use that money for equipping the library. So you're asking the public now to amend the budget, or amend the bonding that was approved for the building of your library. That's
No,
what
I'm not, Mike. No, we're not.
Okay.
It's definitely not. The bond has equipment in it. We cannot have a new building without getting new equipment.
Okay.
Our operating budget includes equipment for the computers, which basically at least 3 years, we need to trade out whatever we need to do with it. There's all kinds of media. Think about everything that you spend money on. Any kind of projectors, technology in general. It's part of the operating, yes it is, and we've used our operating funds for that, because that's what a library does. They have computers. We did not have a bond before. We never have had a bond before. We've used our funds the best way we could to provide the best service that we can.
Okay.
So, we're not amending that bond. We are not. It's a totally different type of expense. It's setting up a library, operating a library.
All right, let me ask you then, why was the language changed then?
That actually came from the attorney. I think actually your resolution language is slightly different than ours.
Now, I have it on both here,
It's the ballot language.
the ballot language here, certainly. And so what I'm suggesting here
No,
is...
we could. I
ahead.
agree with you. I was surprised. We can have it the same language, because to me it's the same thing. But
So
if that would be
I would certainly, and I'm
I can-
appealing to my board members here, my colleagues, that the people here are going to go to the ballot and they're going to say renewed, exactly what I voted for last time. And the library is kind of saying, no, we're changing it. And I'm concerned about that. So that's just, I'm making that statement.
I want to ask you: is the fire and the police millages the exact same as they were before?
That's why I asked the question. They maintained it was the exact same language. Correct.
Okay. I'll have to believe that. This came from the attorney that we both used. I did not ask for anything different, and to me, it's the same wording.
Well, I would be very surprised if our township attorney put language in a ballot other than what was being asked for. I would be very disappointed if our attorney did that. So I'm asking our staff, did our attorney change the language on the ballot request?
I was not party to the conversations that they had with our attorney regarding that particular issue.
Okay. And obviously, I just have to assume that. Does anybody know whether our attorney made that change?
Mike,
I don't know.
I was the only one involved in our millage or our resolution. It's all totally library. I was given police millage, language, a ballot millage, and that's all I had. I didn't have a resolution until last week. We've been trying to get this together
Right.
so it would be acceptable for you, all of you, so it's a little, it was obviously last minute to get the final
Get the old one.
You got the old language.
language because we sent it back to the attorney. I wanted to make sure that they were good with it.
Make some copies of it.
So,
I think these are,
we do not want to change the millage of what the language of what we had before. And I don't want that, anybody in the community to think that we are changing anything. We're not. We are asking for exactly what we have been given in the past, and we've used it very well. So if it helps you, I could change it.
let me interject, Denise. Essentially, what I read here, in the old language, is 8 years from 2010 through 2017, inclusive to provide funds as determined by the library board to be necessary for library operations for all library purposes authorized by law,
Right.
including general operations and goes on to some of the other stuff. But so it's fairly broad in that particular.
Then if that's okay, then I'm good with this language. I'm not good in calling this a renewal when the language is different than what the people saw last time.
It
So-
actually is more broad the last time, Mike, but
I
if you,
agree.
if
It's
you
more
wanna,
broad
if you
last
wanna.
And I'm okay with that. But there's a
Okay.
difference.
Well,
And so,
it would be a renewal in that I believe the mills are now changing, Mike.
Right.
The actual mills says zero.
well, the mills are less because of Headley. So I'm all right with the numbers, but I believe that the people deserve to know that this is exactly what they voted for last time. Otherwise, we should say the amount renewed, language changed, or the definition changed. So it's just again, I'm one vote, and so I have a problem there.
How would you propose to do that?
Do what, Mr. Supervisor?
To make that noted to the public of the change? This is actually more, I think this particular language is more definitive than the previous.
Well, there has to be a reason why equipping was in their bond language,
It's
and
not,
it wasn't in their operating language.
Equipping in the bond language is for fitting and fixtures for the building of equipping is what that,
Now you're interpreting
yes.
instead of stating what it said. You're interpreting something instead of, if their building cost $1 million less than it did, they wouldn't need anything else to equip. They'd have plenty in their budget to equip the library. This says they want to use additional money to equip, and I'm stating the difference, that's all. So I would be in favor of this ballot language as long as we were not changing anything and the people didn't know that the language was actually changing. I'm still opposed to the August ballot, but I would be in favor of this for the November ballot if the language was the same. Or remove the word renewed.
no,
Excuse me.
no.
Mr. Roman,
I can't do that.
can't do
Oh,
that.
It's an essential part of it.
I'm just stating what I see.
Oh, Terry, are you aware if the old language for the fire and police proposals is exactly the same as the
Mike,
older?
I'm not aware, and I'm not aware of anything, and I know this was brought up, of whether the language had to be exactly the same. I'm not aware of anything from MTA at this particular point, of stuff that I have reviewed, and there was several pieces that I had looked at from MTA. I don't see anything in there that says that the language has to be exactly the same for operating millage. The only thing that it does address is that the millage rate has to be what the previous rate was, the beginning rate.
That's what.
And that if it's used for operating purposes, it explains in the criteria that sometimes you can be too specific of what you're going to use the money for and not allow you to use it for other purposes. So I think generally the language that has been done is generally allowed them to do whatever it takes to operate
Facility.
that language. But I'm not aware of anything Mike says that the language has to be
Okay,
specific.
and this is written by your attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
So my comment back would be, if they had to put in there for the building of the building and equipping and all that stuff, as long as the millage is the same, this board would be okay that that's a renewal, is what I'm suggesting.
This has had nothing to do with building to building.
I'm doing a hypothetical, because you guys are saying that because the word changes here, doesn't mean that it can't be renewed. So if they had to put in there, continued building of the building, or putting in
We are not.
basements or council,
It has it in the,
I understand. I hope the board understands what I'm saying. If they had to put some other language in here that says this also allows them to build the building out of these funds, would that be renewal? Just simply because the amount is the same? So that's what I'm wondering.
But that's not the case before us. So to make hypotheticals like that, that's not the case. This language has been approved by all the attorneys. And, according to Terry, our clerk, it's the same concept of renewal. So to create a bunch of hypothetical scenarios right now, I don't think benefits anybody.
Well, that's because it was brought to it was trying to be told, because the things changed and we're allowing them to do some different things, as long as the amount's the same, then it's just a renewal. And I'm challenging us by saying, I don't believe the people would say that that's a renewal. It's being changed from the original request.
may I ask a question of the audience? Pete, is the fire and the police the same language as they had?
What I found out, going online, going to Michigan.gov and trying to read it, yeah.
It's
what I
very
found.
same, so,
Very same, what I
so
found.
you notice the difference between the wording and the operating?
Yeah, because I go, yeah, I noticed.
Okay,
I noticed the difference.
I'm confident that if you would like to change those words to be, it's the same as 8 years ago, our board would be fine with it. It's, like I said, it's broader.
yeah.
It's broader.
It is broader.
I think it's
and
broader.
I have
if
no
that-
problem.
But I also understand your concern that we want
Yeah.
a true renewal. That is understandable. So,
That's up to the board here, whether or not
okay,
to
but
make that
if it goes
change.
past this point as they're asking for something different because they're going to use it for.
Well, the intent is renewal, so we do need to all be clear that the intent is renewal, nothing else slipping in there. I mean, that is the intent of this board, and that is the intent of the library board, is renewal.
The way I read this, the monies could be used for something different than the previous ballot. That's kind of the way I interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to kind of go with the audience there. That comment is the attorneys read this, and their intent was clear as well for renewal.
And it'd be really nice if the attorneys voted. I'm worried about our residents.
But I understand. I'm listening. I think we're all listening.
And again, I'm just one vote, so the board can do what it wants.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Roman is analyzing something right here, and while he's doing that, I'll take a couple comments from the public. You need to identify yourself.
That's the thing, 8774 Thompson. I think the point Mr. Powell is trying to make is the language has changed and we're calling it renewal.
Right,
Where do you draw the line as to how much the language can change?
right.
And still call it renewal. If it's just the millage amount, you can change it all the time, it's still a renewal. In this case, it may be more restrictive, but that doesn't matter. You've
Right.
changed the word.
Thank you for rewording.
I'm wondering whether the attorneys changed it because it was too broad before and they wanted it.
It doesn't matter.
Well,
You
Yeah.
change the wording, you're calling it renewal. It
Right.
doesn't matter if it's for the better or the worse, it's changed. So what happens next time when somebody tries to slip something in?
Right.
In this case, I don't think that was the case, but you set a precedence. Okay? You're calling renewal.
I'm not an attorney, so there's really too much to change.
Mr. Supervisor, are we able to take a quick recess and get the old language so we're not guessing and we can actually?
We have it right here,
Okay, I don't have that down here.
so I'm going to pass that down.
I think we could just eliminate some wording in
Can I,
this.
Mike, if I may, if I made a motion to use the old language, as long as it's okay with the library attorney,
The old,
the old,
Yeah.
what the use is for the,
Right, the
I don't,
uses is-
I can't,
As long as it's approved by the library attorney, and then if not, to use.
This was made up by our attorney, wasn't it?
it was, yes.
This was made up by our attorney, and I have
Ours
a
and not
problem
ours. We-
trying to pass something that our attorney didn't look at when she made up.
What was made up by our attorney?
This
I'm sorry,
language,
This was made up by our attorney.
this language.
This is from 2010.
And
No, the new
2010, that
language.
was a need.
The language that we were going to.
And the language that you have today for the renewal is from Foster Swift, their millage person, who is the same person that did the
Yeah,
police and fire.
This is what I was trying to explain. This was done in,
They are the people that we have used for our millages in the past.
I thought
Even though we're separate,
okay,
they are the ones that,
drafted by.
Mr. Roman, would you mind passing that down so I can see
I
it as
thought I
well?
asked the question right at the very onset, that I said, did our attorney draft the language for the library
The
ballot?
answer is yes.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay.
I believe it's different than what what the request is for.
You have to realize that the original 8 years ago, that was drafted by, I believe, Greg Need, okay?
All right.
And it was just I call it a crafting. I'm not trying to take anything away from what you're saying, first and foremost. But I think it's just a crafting of the hand. I say tomato, you say tomato. It's ultimately the same thing. And I have very high confidence in Foster Swift's ability to review that, in particular Lisa, and I believe that was the reason the library chose, because they felt that the board would be more comfortable if they crafted that particular one. And indeed, that is how I feel. I am much more comfortable knowing that the township board attorney is the architect of this. So,
I believe the language has changed, and so therefore the renewal is different. Well, yeah.
let me swallow first, okay.
When you say a renewal, I agree with Mr. Powell. When you say renewal, put the exact same language in there. Denise doesn't have a problem with this. So if you're adding something to something, it doesn't make it the same as the one before. So you can spin it any way you want, or any way you want. But renewal in identical language is just that.
Well, I have to trust the attorney when they craft these types of documents, and that's what their course of action was, and that was how they decided to craft that, and felt that it met the same intent. I do not want to cause a stall or delay, because we need to have this before the canvassers by the 15th of May.
This has to go to the county by the 15th.
If we want to put it on the August ballot,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion to go with what's here,
Okay,
if that's all right.
go right ahead.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve resolution 18-012, which is the library renewal. And I'm gonna read the ballot language. Shall the previously authorized increase in tax limitation on all taxable property in White Lake, Charter Township, Oakland County, that expired in 2017 be renewed, and the township be authorized to levy an amount not to exceed .3861 mils, which equals 38.61 cents on each $1,000 of taxable value against all taxable property for a period of 8 years, 2018 to 2025 inclusive, for the purpose of operating, maintaining, and equipping the White Lake Township Library or any other purpose authorized by law for library service. The estimate of the revenue the township will collect in the first year, 2018, if the millage is approved and levied by the township, is approximately $429,000. By law, revenue from this millage will be dispersed to the White Lake Township Library.
Okay, a motion. A motion. Looking for support? Looking for support?
I know you're all looking at me.
I'll support the motion.
I'd like to make sure that the intent is clear. I don't want this being a cloud over the library for their primary So if Denise is comfortable with amending this language to be exactly the same, so it is a true renewal, there's
Guarantee
no,
it'll happen if we let
you
it
know,
go.
there's no,
Yeah,
dark cloud over the language. I think that is better for everybody involved, that, you know, no one can come back and say this was something slippery or, you know. So I would actually prefer that the intent is clear for the renewal.
Okay, so with no support, the motion dies.
Motion dies.
Motion dies. Okay.
Yeah, Terry supported.
I'll withdraw my support.
He withdrew his support. The motion has died. Okay? Yes, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Supervisor, I don't know if I'm really comfortable about really changing some language that our attorney has not had an opportunity to look at. I assume from the attorney's standpoint that she's tried to give a library a substantial amount of leeway to spend these funds for operating purposes, and I don't know whether for me, there's a big difference between the equipment that the bond's buying and operational funds that are going to be used to maintain that equipment and go on into the future. But I'm just not comfortable. There's so many things that could be tweaked in this language.
Here it's the
maybe
same.
not making it acceptable that
Yeah, it's,
whatever. But I just voiced my opinion.
I believe both both ballot languages include the words that the library can use it for any purpose authorized by law. So that right there tells me that both
It's a great amount
very
of
similar.
flexibility.
Both very similar.
I think we could move forward making another motion, just tweaking the word equipping is the only difference.
And maintaining and equipping were not in the original language. Otherwise, operating and for any other purpose is in the original language.
If you take out maintaining equipment, then they will not be able to use that funds for maintaining that equipment.
Right.
I'm not sure that that's the case because they've always used it for maintaining in the past.
Terry, it says for any other purpose authorized by law for library service, so why couldn't they maintain their equipment?
Mike, I'm only telling you, there's a big difference between making items generic and making it restrictive enough that can leave it up to purposes that it cannot be used for. And that's in the MTA stuff. I think the library needs as much flexibility as they possibly can to maintain their operational expenses for this new library.
So you like the old language, the original language.
I prefer to go with what our attorney has
Oh, the new
proposed to give them
That's what he's
that
saying.
flexibility to use it for operating
I
purposes.
think the old one is more open.
Well, my level of confidence is high, simply because this is done by the firm that has the township's best interest at heart.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on the confidence of the intent of this. I just don't want, residents to be unsure of the intent or, some kind of dark cloud, hovering over this ballot language until the primary that, so I just want to be really clear that the intent is clear. I think it perhaps is a difference in authors. There's just same firm, two different authors.
Two different attorneys.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm not convinced that the argument that we've heard tonight, that the language has to be the same, is a valid argument. I have not seen anything in writing from MTA that says anything in regards to
And they are our
the
resource center
specifics
for
of the
this type of
language
subject
itself,
matter.
other than the millage rate and the five items that you said. In order to bring flexibility to them to be able to use that money for any operating purposes they see fit, don't want it to be restrictive and say you can't use it for that.
It's similar to the fire and police. but-
And those items are addressed in the MTA.
So if the ballot, if their construction fund ran short and they needed to buy some additional windows, that is equipping the library in your position.
It won't happen.
Okay, I think that,
Is it equipping?
I don't believe it's the same equipment. I'm talking equipment as I see, this is a matter, again, of interpretation. I see equipment for the library as in when the printer breaks down in 2 years, or the computer becomes outdated in 2 or 3 years, or they need a new gizmo or gadget to do whatever it is that they need to do.
In other words, an operating expense.
Equipment, okay?
They have an equipment line item in their budget, and they have,
We have a sinking fund for equipment.
yeah,
Yes.
so they
when
have,
we
it-
replace
so they're
everything-
obviously using it the way it was there before.
Correct, right.
My concern is that equipment can be a much broader interpretation than operating.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying
Okay.
they have that line item in their budget right there that could be, and it's existent, and it could be interpreted 100 different ways.
But it's an operating. And they've always used it as
It's an
operating.
operating,
Right.
correct. And that's what this millage is purposely for, is for the operation of the library.
And I'm in agreement with that.
This millage is for that purpose, and that's what that money is specifically for, is for the purpose of the operation of the library. It has nothing to do and not tied in to the construction of the library.
Okay, and I'm with you, I just think it's confusing.
You want to try this again?
Yeah,
Terry's
I'm
got
looking
his
up
hand
and, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but Terry, there's nothing in the MTA that says it has to be the exact same.
The most important thing in the NTA is the dollar amount.
Right, yeah.
It's based on a dollar amount.
So it could have said the dollar amount and for the constructing of a new building, and it would be a renewal.
That would not be the purpose. The purpose is to operate the library.
Okay. So there does make a difference in the language then.
We don't have constructing in the language. The other
But
two
there's
villages
no-
do.
I purposely don't read it that way. I don't interpret it that way, Mike.
If it came down at the end, the intent, sometimes an attorney and a judge says, it says equipment. What do you think this is? So in the future, somebody's going to interpret it differently than you are tonight.
Anything is possible.
They could do that with any of our villages.
Yeah, any of our millages. You could manipulate them in a court of law to do anything that you wanted with any of that.
And so you guys are good in representing that, that the renewal is exactly what it is, a renewal, even though it's different.
Again, I have to base it on the resources that we have at hand, which is the township attorney and the MTA, which are far more experienced than you and I are, okay?
Yeah.
And they are the ones that set the standards and the operations for these types of things to be done. And I rely also on Mr. Lilly, who, if anyone I know, is extremely cautious as to his steps.
I don't believe the language was specifically asked of MTA. It just doesn't mention it. That doesn't mean that if it was mentioned, they would have come up with a different opinion. My concern is that the public isn't going to hold the attorney responsible. They're going to hold this board responsible.
The MTA actually does have a handbook on it. I'm looking right now, and if we'd like, we could all look at it if we want to take a minute. But it just needs to be to be classified as a renewal. It needs to be the same number of mills and for the same purpose.
And I agree with that language.
And that's what this is for.
I interpret it differently than that.
Mr. Clerk.
I want to finish saying what I wanted to say and wanted to wait really till after a motion was proposed, but I want to go ahead and say it. Number one, I did receive from Denise the resolution that the library board did pass tonight. So for the record, that needs to be. I'm concerned from the standpoint of tonight we received an operating millage operating budget for the library that I believe, and probably many of you that think the library expenses are going to be more than what's been anticipated at this point and whatever. I did not get elected to be on the library board to do the library budget. I want to make sure from our standpoint that we provide as much leeway for the library board to use operating funds for operating purposes. But I will not stand for the fact that if the library cannot manage their budget with this new library, that we're going to be the fall people again to make up deficits
But that's not what we're here.
on behalf of the library.
I
So
understand that.
again, I just want to express my concern when it comes to the operating, but still, my vote tonight as far as moving ahead with the language and getting them their operating funds that they've asked for, certainly willing to move forward to do that, so.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Rowan, or do you have, Ms. Smith, did you have?
Well, in reading the MTA guidelines, I believe that, without, a ton of time to research it, but just as I'm reading it here at this moment, I believe that this millage language presented before us tonight does fit in with the intent of a renewal according to MTA. So, I do think the intent, is what it is, that our attorneys were, I just think it's a different author. It's the same firm, the intent is the same. I do think we could we could move forward with this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions, Ben?
Well, I think with the new language, what Mike's recommending is we take out 3 words, maintaining and equipping. If that was done, the language still allows the library to use these funds for any purpose authorized by law for library services, which is going to include maintaining and equipping. So, Denise,
I think
so if you're okay with that.
Yes, I'm okay with it. But
I'm okay with that too,
Okay,
but
ask
I
Terry
do
if he's
think we
okay
need
with it.
to,
We take out 3 words.
we need to just include I think in our motion that as long as, there might be some reason unbeknownst to us that our attorneys say they have to be in, so as long as it passes the
Subject to-
library's attorney, I think that would
I would feel more
be.
comfortable having it subject to an attorney's secondary review.
Our attorney, not their attorney, because
Oh, this-
originally it was,
No.
originally you had said as long as it's okay with the library attorney. That's
No,
like totally different.
They hired our attorney.
No, it's our attorney.
They hired the same firm, but a different attorney.
same attorney, Mike
Same attorney, Lisa Hamani.
Powell.
Okay.
Lisa,
Oh, this
I don't
was-
think Lisa did it. I believe Ann Schmick
But I think Lisa
Schmick or something did it.
It's a different
I
attorney.
stand
And-
corrected.
Ann Schmick did it. Both of them. Both the police, or all 3, police, fire, and ours. She's their millage person that they all go to. So it's the same author.
I would say subject to a review,
Okay.
and I can get that done tomorrow morning.
Okay, so can I make that motion?
Yes, make that motion.
Need my sheet back.
Get your sheet back?
So the motion that did not get supported, can I bring that back and amend it?
Make a new motion. No, that
New
was,
motion.
that was,
Okay, new motion
Never
to
supported.
approve resolution 18-012, library renewal millage proposal. Do you want me to read it again, Rick?
really it.
Shall the previously authorized increase in tax limitation on all taxable property in White Lake Charter Township, Oakland County, that expired in 2017 be renewed, and the township be authorized to levy an amount not to exceed .3861 mils or 38.61 cents on each $1,000 of taxable value against all taxable property for a period of 8 years, 2018 to 2025 inclusive, for the purpose of operating the White Lake Township Library or any other purpose authorized by law for library service. The estimate of the revenue the township will collect in the first year, 2018, if the millage is approved and levied by the township is approximately $429,000. By law, revenue from this millage will be dispersed to the White Lake Township Library. And I make this motion subject to our attorney's approval.
I have a motion. Looking for support?
I'll support. I'm sorry.
I'll support.
A motion and support.
Under discussion first? before we get
Discussion.
started?
You haven't discussed it enough?
Yeah, I haven't, yes, we've discussed it, but the library board was very strong in stating that the motion to approve the construction of the new building was approved by 3 people, and their statement was, the people have spoken. Therefore, it's a done deal, case closed, the people have spoken. I would very much like this to be put on the November ballot, so I would like more people to speak on it, not fewer people to speak on it. So that's why I will vote no on this motion. But I do appreciate this board changing it so that we're not accused of modifying the renewal. Thank you for that.
But subject to those 3 words. So if the attorneys say we need those 3 words, then it's subject to those 3 words and we'll move forward.
It's subject to the attorney's
Yep.
review.
Subject to attorney's review.
Yes. Yes, I support that motion.
Motion, support, roll call vote.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Paul,
No, for the reasons I stated.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Colwell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Denise.
Okay.
Or are we gonna miss the 15th?
No.
No, we're voting on the resolutions this evening and they'll be turned into the county by the 15th.
Don't worry.
Right.
I'll make sure that they address it. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I understand that you talked about the groundbreaking tomorrow, and you have a meeting. I'm sorry.
No, you were supposed to get an email. I don't know why I have
We
difficulty.
didn't really officially talk about it yet.
We suspended the department head meeting
Thank
so
you.
that all the department heads could attend
Wonderful.
the groundbreaking because of the importance to the township.
Good. Appreciate that.
Um,
Nice day. We do have goodies, too, after. Please come to the library.
Goodies are always a draw. Okay,
From the Friends of the Library.
thank you. We have on our agenda trustee comments. Ms.
I'm
Voorhees,
good.
You good?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm good, Mr. Supervisor.
You're good?
No
You good?
comments either.
No comment? I have no comment. Any comment? No comment?
I do. Yep. I'll hold most of my comments till next meeting, but I do want to just address a couple of things that were said this evening. I actually have a tremendous amount of faith in our residents and their intelligence and their willingness to be active citizens with the White Lake Township's best interest in mind. Unlike my colleague, Mr. Powell, I like him personally very much, but I found his comment somewhat offensive to say that something along the lines of that he didn't think our residents were wise. Public safety is of the utmost importance to me, and I'd like to thank our police and fire department for their daily outstanding service to our community. And in our community, historically, our elections are won in the primary. We have very important offices up for election in White Lake Township, and I have the confidence in the current candidates that are running that they'll make a great effort to get out the vote, and there are a lot of important issues on the primary ballot. So I do believe in the election process and the integrity of the voting process, and it's our civic duty to be an informed, educated, and interested voter, and to actively participate in our election process. And I'm here to represent the people, and just like in last primary, I will continue to represent the vote of the people and the integrity of the election process. This evening, we acted as a board just to simply put these 3 millages on the ballot. Now it's up to you, the people. And so I enthusiastically am asking and encouraging all residents to participate in the election process this August. And again, it's your civic duty. If you're not sure how to get involved, please contact our clerk's office. We have an elections specialist, and any of us, I'm sure, will help you to get plugged in and get information about the important issues and the candidates that are on the ballot in August. And lastly, we mentioned it a little bit, but there is a groundbreaking ceremony for the White Lake Township Library tomorrow. It's on the property itself where the new library will be built, 9 a.m., and then refreshments will be hosted by the Friends of Library back at the current library. So I hope you'd all join us tomorrow morning as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
I have a motion, myself, support. Mr. Roman, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Supported that.